Lesson 9-13, Histograms. By the end of today's lesson, you will be able to make or use a frequency table in preparation for constructing a histogram, as well as make and use a histogram. Make sure you have your pencil and paper ready so you can take notes and work right along with me. So a histogram represents categories of data that are continuous intervals, each with the same range. A histogram looks almost exactly like a bar graph because that's how you're going to graph it using bars. But the difference is you're going to have the groups of data. Instead of doing one number for each bar like you do on a bar graph, there's going to be a range of numbers for each bar that you make. So in this one, we have the heights of Ms. Einhard's students in inches. So here's everyone's inches. Then we need to take that and actually make a frequency table. So that's going to look like this. So here we have the heights, and they've put them in different ranges. So we have 49 to 52 inches, 53 to 56, 57 to 60, 61 to 64, and 65 to 68. So when you're deciding what range to put it in, you need to figure out how many numbers you have to begin with, and then divide that into equal groups. Then that way you've got a good range for each section. So once they've done that, now they've made the tally marks and tallied up each number within the 49 to 52 range was 9 times, and then we just counted all of the tally marks for that. So to make a histogram, first use the frequency table to choose and label a scale on the vertical axis for the frequencies. Second, label the horizontal axis, listing the intervals in order. Third, draw bars with no space between them to show the frequency of each interval. And fourth, write a title for the histogram. So make sure you have these notes copied down before we go on to actually making the histogram. Okay, so here's what the graph looks like finalized, so I'm going to walk through each step with you. So the first step would be to use the frequency table to choose and label a scale on the vertical axis for the frequencies. So here's our vertical axis right here. And we look at our frequency table. We saw we had the numbers 9, 8, 12, 0, and 1. So we go from 0 all the way up to 12, because that would include all of our frequencies. Then we need to label that, which would be the number of students. That's what it was on the frequency. We counted how many students were in each height range. Then you would draw your horizontal axis. Now right here, there's a break. This shows, okay, we don't have any information. There's no one who was under 49 inches. We don't need to start out clear over here at 0 and go all the way through 48. We'd end up with a really long bar on the bottom here with not a lot of data. So we use, this is called a broken scale. It shows, okay, we know that there's numbers here that we just didn't list, but it's because we didn't have any data in that range. So we're showing our data starts right here at 49. So again, this is a broken scale, and you use that when you have a long section with no data in it. So now we labeled this with each of these intervals. We had the 49 through 52, 53 through 56, 57 through 60, 61 through 64, and 65 through 68. And this was all taken off of our frequency chart. These were the ranges that we already had. So the next step would be to label that, and it would be heights in inches, because that's what it was that we were recording here, was the heights of each student. Our next step then would be to draw the bars with no space between them. So in our 49 through 52, it said there were 9. So we would draw that right on up to the 9 and then fill it in. Our next one is the 53 through 56. When we look on our frequency chart, there were 8. So that would come right up to here at the top of the blue one. And then the 57 through 60, there were 12. So that went clear up here. And then we had nothing here in the 61 to 64, so we just leave that open. And in our last one, the 65 through 68, we only had one. So that's a really short bar. Make sure when you're doing this that these bars are touching, because it's showing that this data goes 52 to 53. They're right here next to each other. So that's another difference. You don't always have bar graphs touching when it's just a regular bar graph. Our last step would be to write the title for the histogram, and this was Heights of Ms. Eilhart's Students. So now we can take a look at this graph, and if they ask us questions, we can look at the graph and interpret the data, like, in which height group are most of Mrs. Eilhart's students? Well, we look here and we see this one is the tallest one, so we would say the group would be the 57 through 60 inch range. Make sure you rewatch any parts of this video before heading off to do today's assignment.